wanted to welcome you. Just wanted to welcome you to Meredith. And Beth and I are here to talk about your health and wellness, which is such an important aspect of your being successful at Meredith. We know that this new student orientation is a chance for you to get to know some people at Meredith, as well as what the campus values and how to be set up for success for this semester. So we're so happy to be with you today. We also know that it can be a little stressful sometimes to start a new experience. So sometimes I'd like to use the analogy for new students who are starting new at a campus experience, if this is your first time in college, or perhaps this is a time you're continuing your education, maybe you transferred to Meredith. We know that getting to know a campus can be overwhelming sometimes, so please take care of yourself. And we really want to welcome you to Meredith today. We know that we stand between now and lunch. So Beth and I realize we have some information to go over with you today. And of course, you'll have time to ask your questions as well. We do ask during the presentation, if you would put your questions into the chat. You can either do that by sending a chat message through the chat function to either Beth or me, so that nobody else can see it. I think you have that availability, or you can send it to everyone. And then Beth and I will answer the questions at the end of the session. So first of all, I'm Ann Gleason. I'm Dean of Students at Meredith College. Today I'm up in the Student Center, Kate Park Center. I'm on the second floor. I'm in my office, and I'm right down the hall from Holly Weekland, who coordinates orientation. I'm across campus from Beth Meyer in the Counseling Center, and we're all here on campus today. We're excited to get to know you. Beth, you want to introduce yourself?
Right. No, I'm Beth Meyer. I'm the director of the Counseling Center. I also do and oversee disability services out of my office. So I love the beginning of the year and welcoming new students. So thank you so much for choosing Meredith. And I hope that I get to work with you all and meet with you, hopefully in person here. But I realize remote is much easier for orientation. So I'm glad to be finishing up your orientation with you today. And always enjoy working with Ann. So you'll enjoy, I hope, meeting with both of us as the semester continues.
All right, Beth. Well, we will start with talking about well-being.
Right, and I think it does help to have that definition, right? So well-being is an active process to become aware of making positive choices towards holistic health and a fulfilling lifestyle. It's an ongoing process that involves personal time and commitment. So it really is an active thing that we're doing and not something that happens to us. I really appreciate how Meredith has kind of illustrated wellness in a broader way. So you'll see, we're talking about environmental sustainability, that environmental health, intellectual health, some of the things that you typically would think of, physical health, spiritual health, but also financial, occupational, emotional, which is obviously a lot of my area, in addition to the social. And we're going to focus in on the social today. So you'll be hearing about different aspects of wellness, along your journey here at Meredith with different programs that are offered.
Great. So going back to what Beth has mentioned, you saw there were different aspects of wellness, and we're going to focus on the relationships and social today. There are a lot of ways for you to access information about health and thriving and success at Meredith and how to stay well. We're going to be going through a couple resources today, later, the Counseling Center, the Health Services area, and some resources for you to support you. We also have some ways for you to, if you're just interested, maybe it's middle of the night and you want to access information about mindfulness or eating healthy, or perhaps your sleep habits. We have all of our students have access to Campus Well, which is an online newsletter and wellness blog and source of information. So anytime that you want to access that, feel free to read the articles, get to know some more information. When you're in college, it's good that you take charge of your own health and wellness. And so sometimes learning new strategies to maximize your health and relationships and health and all that you do is going to be a big part of college. So when we think about relationships and community, we know that that's a big part of health. So Beth is going to chat with us a little bit about that importance of healthy community and relationships.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, so we're going to start off talking about healthy relationships, which is, again, as the director of the Counseling Center and providing a lot of personal counseling on campus, is certainly a component of what we do in my center. So this is a natural thing to be discussing. We are going to be progressing from talking about healthy relationships to unhealthy relationships, as well as some information about Title IX, sexual violence. And so I want to give you a heads up about that. I'll probably be mentioning this again right when Anna and I do the transition to some of that more emotionally difficult information. Certainly, we want you to take care of yourself. If you need to step away, you can. Our program today is going to be recorded, so you could access this later, and we've got lots of resources online that you can. I know the Dean of Students Office has links off their page to be able to get to all the Title IX things. So know that you'll have multiple ways to get to this information, but please stay with us. Wanting to talk about healthy relationships. And this is a time that I welcome you to use the chat to kind of think about, who are those folks that you really depend on? Here I'm going to even give some adjectives away: trustworthy, right? Things that you think of in terms of the people you feel closest to. What makes a healthy relationship? What are some of the adjectives you think of as you're thinking of those relationships, and what you might be looking for as you're thinking about making new friends here at Meredith, relationship with your faculty, staff, other folks? What comes to mind? Loyalty. Yeah. Yeah. I want someone who's got my back and is going to, be there and committed to that relationship. It's one of the reasons why I've stayed so long at Meredith. Yes. Trustworthy, commonalities, having some similar things that you like and enjoy, trust, respect, awesome. Open-mindedness, definitely. Going to be a lot of new things in college, and really wanting that acceptance, open-mindedness. Great job.
And I think about openness to what makes us all unique, right? So how do we respect each other? How do we become open and curious about who people are and how to get to know them? So these are great.
Definitely. That is good. Well, as you can imagine, we've come up with our own list as well, and you're going to see some overlap. Thinking about effective communication, again, that openness, support from those folks, respecting differences, someone who's self-aware, the honesty, trust. Yeah, we want to have fun, right? And someone who makes you feel good about yourself, and you feel appreciated and valued in that relationship. And again, that being active and engaged in that relationship. Yep, accepting of ourselves and the other person. Thank you so much. And on the other side, we definitely have the red flags, right? Which a lot of these are going to almost be the opposite or the flip of some of the things we just read through. Are there some things that stand out to you that feel like a red flag in relationships that may make you kind of put up a wall or take a step back, pause a little bit if you see some behaviors or some indicators of kind of what we would call a red flag in a relationship? Impulsivity, someone who's insecure, withholding information, downright lying, not thinking about your needs, thinking about their own. Really feeling like you can't be your whole self with them, pressure to change in ways that don't feel comfortable to you. Too much criticism. And some of the comments we get as we do this presentation is, there are going to be times that you may see some of these behaviors, but to be able to address those in your relationship. So, again, you could definitely add to this list of red flags. And we're going to go through just a few slides, kind of thinking about green flags for growth and positivity. So maybe that constructive feedback instead of criticism quite so much. And then things that again are red flags. Thank you for that peek, Anne. Right? And you can go ahead and go. So, but things that are going to help us, maybe think about feeling manipulated, that you feel like you can't be yourself again, that other people are trying to potentially in backwards kind of ways persuade you or push you to do something. Would we think of that as something that's growthful, or would be a red flag? Pretty obvious, right? We definitely have the red flag there. Certainly something that you can learn from, but to be, on the out, looking out for that. Oftentimes when we're making new friendships, it's easy to want to just be agreeable, and to be watchful in all of our relationships, and thinking about the red flags as well. I love this one. Accepting responsibility for their own actions, our own actions. Would that be, came up for y'all, right? Red flag, green flag, definitely green flag, that there is growth in our relationships and taking responsibility for when we make missteps is a biggie. And again, I know that you all can think of other things that you're looking for in those relationships. And we can go to the next slide. And I really encourage you to be intentional as you're making new friendships and thinking about how you want to present and be and grow in your relationships here as a young adult at Meredith and in the community. What are those things that you're looking for and are striving to be and be better at potentially? So again, thinking about those healthy relationships. We are going to move into the part of the presentation that talks about some of these red flags that we mentioned, and some of the resources on campus, talking about concepts like consent. If you feel a need to walk away or to take a break, these things may hit home. We understand that, so please do take care of yourself. Thank you, Anne, and I'll leave this to you.
Thank you so much, Beth. Yes, as Beth mentioned, of course, when we're talking about red flags in a relationship, when we're talking about real severity in perhaps danger in a relationship, unhealthy relationships, these are major red flags when we're talking about non-consensual sexual activity. So what we're going to focus on in the next few minutes is something related to what we call Title IX. And this is related to non-consensual sexual intercourse, sexual contact and activity. And we're going to be talking about how to define that, what does that mean? And all of these non-consensual activity or forms of activity or are things that violate our sexual misconduct policy at Meredith, as well as Title IX. And Title IX, you may have heard that wording before. Title IX, that refers to a federal law that is set up to protect people in the US from sexual discrimination, gender discrimination, and that includes sexual harassment and non-consensual sexual activity. These acts are a violation of our college policies as well as a federal Title IX policy. Every college in America has what's called a Title IX coordinator, and ours is Pam Galloway in Human Resources, which is actually located in the first floor of the Kate Park Center, right below my office. And then I'm what's called a Deputy Title IX coordinator. So Pam and I coordinate response to reports of any kind of Title IX reporting. So I wanted to make sure you had our faces and our names. You're meeting me today, Ann Gleason. Pam Galloway is once again the Director of Human Resources, and she is also somebody that coordinates our Title IX response at Meredith. If you or a friend of yours at Meredith ever experienced sexual violence or non-consensual sexual activity, and you wanted to report that to the college, we would be the people to report that to. And remember, when we're talking about sexual activity, we're talking about something that is missing something, and that is consent. So what do we mean by consent? We use the terminology yes means yes. It can't be gained by forcing somebody or taking advantage of another person. It can't be inferred by silence or maybe a lack of resistance. Prior consent for sexual activity does not imply future consent for sexual activity. Once a person says no, it does not matter if there had been past sexual behavior activity. It could be something that just occurred in the last few minutes, and if somebody says no, the activity needs to stop at that time. It can't be given by minors, somebody who cannot make decisions for themselves. Maybe they're mentally incapacitated, perhaps they're unconscious, maybe they are under the influence in a major way by alcohol or drug, inhibition or unconsciousness, and in another way, if they're physically unable to act on their own or respond on their own. It's also not implied by things like how someone dresses, right? So consent is the main thing that we're talking about today, activity that is non-consensual. So it needs to be mutually consented upon. And then some of these other terms that we're using. So under this large umbrella of sexual misconduct and under Title IX, things that are considered to be a Title IX violation would be sexual harassment, and there's many different types of sexual harassment. So non-consensual sexual penetration, which sometimes we refer to as rape, it can be defined by penetration, and that may be oral, vaginal, by a penis, a tongue, a finger, or any other object. Fondling, touching a person's private parts without their consent. Quid pro quo, which actually refers to somebody being forced to engage in sexual activity to receive something in return. Stalking is engaging in conduct directed at somebody that is unwanted. So we use the example of, let's say somebody just broke up with a partner, and that partner maybe has been asked not to have contact with you, and that person sends a lot of unwanted messages, a barrage of messages, gifts, flowers, etc., that are unwanted. That could cause a serious enough distress that a reasonable person may fear for their safety and cause them emotional distress. That would be stalking. Other areas of sexual misconduct are related to relationships, right? So dating violence, sexual or physical abuse or threat between partners who have been or are in a social relationship. It could be romantic or intimate. Domestic violence is attempting or intentionally causing bodily injury or emotional distress by causing fear, and it's with somebody who is in a personal relationship. It could be a domestic relationship where somebody lives with somebody. Perhaps they share a child together. Perhaps they live in the same home, or they're married. Sexual violence, just as a reminder, can occur between persons of the same or different gender. And what else is prohibited by our Meredith policy? Something called sexual exploitation. That is when someone takes an advantage of another person in a sexual way without their consent by perhaps sharing a video of them. That's one example, sharing a video of them engaging in sexual conduct and streaming that, distributing that, sharing that with others when that has not been consented to. Coercion, using unreasonable and persistent pressure or force or threat to initiate or continue sexual activity against someone's consent or will. Complicity, knowingly aiding or abetting or assisting, encouraging others to follow through on sexual misconduct. What is not allowed by our policy is any kind of retaliation. So let's say somebody reports some kind of suspected sexual misconduct or Title IX, that person can never be retaliated against. Nobody can get back at them for reporting that. False allegation, it's obviously a one of our policy violations would be to bring a knowingly false allegation against somebody for a Title IX violation. And Beth is going to talk a little bit about why we talk about this so much at college campuses, why we talk about this for our students, and the impact on sexual violence. So I'll let Beth kind of handle the first couple slides.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, no, the prevalence is incredible. So more than 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience sexual violence involving physical contact during their lifetimes. Alcohol can definitely be a part of that. Over half of the campus sexual assaults occur when an individual is incapacitated by drugs or alcohol. Typically that is alcohol. And as you can imagine, sexual violence is one of those things that is often underreported. And so we suspect that these numbers are actually even higher. And the impact on the person who experiences sexual violence, and even those friends and loved ones, is really profound. Oftentimes, like I mentioned, not coming forward to do the report. Sometimes it's a fear of not being believed. Depression, you can imagine, all the things that happen when you're feeling really distressed, difficult to sleep, difficult to eat, concentrate, feeling a lot of anxiety, can feel edgy and irritable, or also that kind of loss of energy. Sometimes students and others experience flashbacks, memories of the assault. Sometimes people block that out, but feel like something has happened, so that our memories are often scattered, especially if drugs and alcohol have been involved. It kind of piecing together what has happened can be a very scary process. Pregnancy and STDs. And again, all those things that go with feeling depressed, potentially suicidal thoughts, feelings of worthlessness, being broken, and isolating, having a difficult time trusting and feeling safe out with people.
One thing I think about, Beth, is that we're a caring community. And so sometimes when we think about the impact on people who experience sexual violence, even if it's not that we've had that experience, we know that maybe our friends and family members perhaps had that experience. So it's good to understand the impacts and perhaps changes in behavior for people,
Right.
Checking in on a friend if you feel like they're, having some impacts that would concern you.
No, and I appreciate you mentioning that. And oftentimes we actually have students, friends, roommates, classmates, actually even walk a student over to the counseling center. We'll talk about some of those services as we progress. But yes, it affects them too, worried about that friend. So I appreciate that. Huge impact.
Absolutely. Thank you, Beth, for going over those impacts, which are many. One thing we wanted to get across to you today is that obviously Meredith College does not tolerate sexual misconduct or Title IX violations. You'll find during your time at Meredith that this is a caring community and where we respect and care for each other. Violence does not have a place at Meredith. You can see that from the many impacts that somebody would experience with sexual misconduct violations, that this can really be an impediment for someone to be successful at Meredith, to attend class, to be able to live freely on campus and be able to move about their world without fear. We do offer quick and clear support and resources for people that report any sexual violence or Title IX issue. We do provide a prompt, fair, and effective steps to address sexual violence or misconduct that may have occurred, and we provide supportive measures. We do want Meredith to be a place that voices are heard. And so our Title IX and sexual misconduct policy is rather long and very, very detailed, and it's included in our online student handbook. As a student, if you have not taken a chance to go through some of the aspects of our student handbook, which can also be found, our student handbook can be found online, please, I hope you'll take time to look through some of the policies we have on campus, some of the opportunities we have on campus that are outlined there. We also have a Title IX website, as Beth has mentioned. We have that here. It's really, I believe it shows up at the bottom of about every Meredith website is how to click on it to get to the Title IX information. So we know we're going over a lot of information today, but we wanted to make sure that we leave you with some information about campus resources. The first one is that I'm going to go over is a little bit about if you or someone that you care about does experience sexual violence, sometimes the first thing we think about is medical assistance. So if someone needs immediate medical assistance, an excellent local place that we are so fortunate to have in Wake County and Raleigh is Interact, which is a nonprofit that assists persons who have experienced domestic violence as well as sexual assault. And the Solace Center is actually a part of Interact that is probably about a mile down the road, very close. And that is where people can receive immediate help and exams within, and sometimes students or people that experience sexual violence, you know, sometimes they want immediate medical assistance. They can go to the Solace Center, they can call the number first to make sure someone is available to see them. They can also call the Rape Crisis Line, which is a 24-hour hotline that you can also always go to a local ER. Here in Wake County or wherever you're located, a local ER is also a good place to go. The Solace Center actually has trained sexual assault rape examiners, nurse examiners, and they can also collect evidence if that's needed after something's occurred. And the most likely timeline for them to collect evidence is within 5 days of the incident occurring. You can also always call 911, of course, for immediate support or transport. Other health services on campus, I'm going to have Beth go into some of our on-campus health and counseling services, some of our confidential support.
Thank you, Ann. No, and Interact, I can't say enough about them. They've just been a huge support for education, intervention, and like you say, to be able to do the examinations. I know that especially these last few years with COVID, they really appreciate if we can call first before you come. They've got people on call that may need to drive in to be able to do that. They're just amazing at how much they've tried to be very reactive and present for, you know, whatever needs come up day and night. So call first, but great resource. And I hope that that folks will use the confidential assistance and confidential resources as well. So when I say confidential, it's more than just private, legally and otherwise, because of our licensure, for example, for me as a psychologist in the counseling center. And so there's three different offices that are offer and need to offer confidential support: the counseling center, the health center, and our campus chaplain. So we are not going to share information with anyone else. Ann's going to talk a little bit later about some other resources that are going to keep things private and very quiet, but report things to her. So, you know, just like any other counseling situation, when students come to us about any kind of sexual violence, domestic violence, that is all confidential, and we will provide resources. You know, I just talked about a lot of the impacts that come from a sexual assault, to be able to even work through some of those issues in counseling and to be able to provide that help. Yep, so there I am. And I've got a great staff that I work with. We are on the second floor of Carroll Hall. We're asking people to enter through the west side, Martin. We're very COVID safe, as well as a safe place to come in terms of emotions. We've got a 1 o'clock crisis hour Monday through Friday, and we are also available on call. Folks can reach us through campus police, and those numbers are going to be listed here in a minute, as well as through a critical response team, and all of that is online as well. Yes, I love this picture of our fun health center staff. They are fantastic. Sherry, Ann, and Mary. Mary Johnson is on your right, and she is our health center director. So she also has been tremendous during COVID. I'm so fortunate to have her. But all these folks, there is, you know, in terms of being worried about STDs, pregnancy, just to even be able to consult with them. They are very much available, and again, confidential. They're not going to share that information even with me or other confidential resources. All your information would stay within the health center. So again, a great resource in Carroll. And our chaplain, Tracy Purdue, is fantastic. And sometimes that's the place to go, right? To be able to have, again, that confidential resource to talk about and experience and process that with her is one more option that would be kept totally confidential. There's definitely a lot of really great community resources. Anne had mentioned Interact. RAIN is also a national organization that is wonderful, has hotline, has a lot of information online that can be helpful both for folks who have experienced some kind of sexual violence and those who really want to be of help and support.
So Beth has gone over our 3 confidential resources on campus. So if you ever wanted to speak to somebody and you did not want to report it to the college, the 3, just in summary, are the Counseling Center, the Health Center, and our chaplain, Stacy Purdue. If you did want to report any incident of sexual misconduct or sexual violence, you can always report that to Pam Davis Galloway in Human Resources or myself. We will offer supportive measures to you. We may go over resources such as the Counseling Center or community resources that you may be interested in. And if a student shares information about sexual misconduct or violence that they experienced, and they share that with a Meredith faculty or staff member, that person is not a confidential resource. That person would need to let me know if it's a student reporting that, so that I can reach out to offer that student support. And if a person who committed that act of, or that incident of sexual misconduct, perhaps they are enrolled at another college. If a person wanted to report that person, we can assist that student in contacting the other college to report through their Title IX process. And I've been able to do that for a couple students, is to help them contact the other college and make that report.
As you know, Anne, we've had Counseling Center staff and I have actually accompanied students to be able to be that support person. That can be a little bit daunting, but very powerful if you feel like you want to and can make that report. So we're available to be a support there as well if it involves another institution.
Absolutely. Thank you, Beth. And finally, of course, about reporting, students are not obligated to report to law enforcement, local law enforcement, or our campus police. But sometimes students do want information about what would happen if they did report. We do have, I'm featuring our 2 folks that are sworn police officers at Meredith. On your left is Chief White, who's the chief of our campus police on campus, and Assistant Chief Mark Utley on the right. So Al White on the left and Mark on the right. These are wonderful resources for our campus community. Sometimes a student just wants to meet with one of them or a campus police officer to just discuss what would happen if I did report it to, let's say, Raleigh Police Department. What would happen if I want to get a restraining order? For instance, what does that next step look like? So although not obligated to report, these are wonderful resources that know a lot more than Beth and I would about what happens with law enforcement after someone reports. So students are not obligated to report to law enforcement or campus police, but this is a good resource in case students need it. And so what would happen next? Let's say a student did contact me, perhaps shared it with a non-confidential resource, and then I reach out to that student. The first thing is support and resources. So, sometimes I'll email the student to say, someone shared with me that you had an experience off campus, for instance. What can I do to offer support and resources to you? And I might outline, I might provide a link to our Title IX page. I might mention a few resources such as the Health Center, the Counseling Center, the Chaplain's Office, and then provide information about college policies and complaint and grievance processes, and then ensure safety. So if somebody has an immediate safety issue, we're going to want to address that first, right? For instance, we may want to take immediate action on campus. Let's say somebody needs a change because perhaps they had a breakup with a boyfriend who's abusive and that boyfriend knows where they live on campus, we might decide to move them to another space on campus so that they feel safer. Those are some things that we could offer just as an example. For grievance procedures, sometimes students just want to report it so they can get access to resources and to think about their immediate safety. There is never any time that the college is going to force somebody to report something or to seek out a resource on or off campus, to report to law enforcement. There's no time that the college is going to in any way force that. Now, if a student decides that the person who the complaint is against is someone on campus, they can go through our great grievance procedures. They can go through an informal resolution process where that's appropriate. That is not available for people who experience rape, for instance, sexual assault. But there may be some instances that are, for instance, related to perceived sexual harassment or experienced sexual harassment, where perhaps informal resolution, if both parties are open to that, could be a possibility. For formal grievance process, that would be a formal Title IX complaint, and then we would follow our formal grievances for sexual misconduct in Title IX. And often if a student is involved in that, I will assist them through that process. If it's just faculty and staff involved and no students involved, then Pam Galloway and HR will assist in that. So what can you do? At the end of our process, we usually try to give you some information about, with all this information, what do you do next? Beth had mentioned that one of the reasons there's a high, such a high reporting there's incidents of sexual violence that people don't report is that there's a fear that someone won't be believed. So if you have someone that's close to you that shares with you that they've had an experience, really take time to listen to them, to listen to what they need, to perhaps help them bridge to resources. That is also a good way to do that. Never forcing somebody to use a resource they don't want to use because perhaps they're not ready for that yet, but to believe them, to support them, to see what they need, to access campus community resources that are available. That's always a good thing for you to do, as well as to encourage your friends and your classmates to do. And then there's things about our culture, right, on campus, as well as our outside culture, outside in the community, that are all part of a culture that we would like to see changed, right? So what can we do on an individual level that if perhaps we hear a joke that is inappropriate, perhaps we hear something, maybe gossip that disparages others, perhaps there's a social media comment that we feel like is harmful to others, it's good to step up, right? Be engaged as an active bystander. And sometimes we don't use active bystander as much as upstander as the wording for that. How do you intervene when it's safe? We would never expect somebody to step into a violent situation to intervene where they put themselves at risk. But there are ways that you can be a non-confrontational upstander, and some of those strategies are on our website. And also we have some of those right here. Beth is going to run through some of those.
No, I really appreciate that. And there's just lots of really great short online ways to talk about this as well. But the steps really are noticing a situation. For example, maybe you're on campus and you see two people having kind of a fiery argument that, and the body language feels threatening. So noticing that event, recognizing that action may need to be taken, right? Deciding whether or not to take action. And then you've got some choices. You could directly go up, especially if you know the people and would feel safe doing that, to say, wait a minute, do y'all need to separate, right? Or you could distract. If it were Anne, I could say, Anne, hey, can you come over here, right? So I could try to separate the people in that way. I could call campus police and say, I'm concerned that these two folks are having kind of a heated argument. It feels to me like it could get physical, and I could ask campus police. I could seek out other people who are authorities in those areas to get assistance. So I can delegate that. If I miss an opportunity, I can also talk to a peer, a student, anyone after the fact. You know, I saw that you were in this situation, I didn't act. You know, I'm wondering if there's anything after the fact that I could do to support you, right? So there's different levels of action, and to think about that. And to know that being an upstander means being really an active part of the community. And again, that we don't tolerate disrespect or disregard. That we really want to be present and look after each other. I think we have a huge, not just reputation, but a very caring campus, and want that to be, you know, something that we're proud of in Paramount, a close community.
And Beth, I would agree with that. I think, you know, some of our students that are coming from other campuses or even other high school experiences might see on our campus that we do take special attention to looking around and reporting things that maybe seem a little bit off. We would much rather students report that instead of kind of thinking about it later. So I think it's totally fine to, for instance, call our campus police is 8888 if somebody's calling from campus, or the 919-760-8888 to call campus police and just say, hey, I'm seeing something that is making me concerned. Can you come check it out? So I do think that we've set up a culture on campus where we do have a very caring community, so that if somebody is concerned about someone they know or something they're seeing on campus, they can report that. Thank
No,
you.
and I appreciate, Anne, that you're also one of those contact people, maybe even after the fact, if there's a concern. Residence Hall's director, so there's a lot of people. I understand that campus police might not always be the most comfortable people to call, but to know that there's resources for you and for others here on campus.
Thank you, Beth. And then finally, as we end, how do you find out more information? You're going to get the recording today of this presentation. You can go to the Title IX website for some of that information that we talked about today, how to be an effective upstander. We have a wonderful video about that. We will be working on some events for Sexual Assault Awareness Week, which typically is held in April. And we usually have a couple student organizations work on that. We welcome your involvement if you're interested at all in maybe being part of the planning committee this year. Feel free to email Beth or me. And of course, stand up against violence wherever you can, any type of violence. And here's our contact information. We realized today that there may be some things that you have concerns about, and maybe you would like to discuss those with us individually. So our emails are here. This is also a good time to put any questions in the chat so that Beth and I can address those either individually or for the group. I am looking at the chat, Beth, and just reviewing that. And I do not see any questions for us about the content today. But once again, if you don't have questions about what we presented today, it was a lot to take in, of course, especially during orientation. But please email either of us if we can support you during your time at Meredith about the issues we talked about today, or any time that you need support, or maybe someone just to bounce ideas off or needs support about who can I go to at Meredith for this assistance. Beth and I, if we are not the people that you need to talk with, we'll be glad to put you in touch with the people that are. We wish you the very best as you begin your classes tomorrow. And please let us know how we can support you. Anything, Beth, as we finish?
No, but I thank you, Holly, for inviting Ann and I to do this. I always find that I've got students who end up following up afterwards for counseling, and I appreciate that. Doesn't need to be about sexual violence, but again, that we're just excited to welcome new students to campus. Thank you for choosing Meredith, and have a great first day. It almost is going to be like 2 first days. I think you're going to have tomorrow remote, and then next week being here on campus. We've got a gorgeous campus. So just look forward to getting to know you all.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Anne and Beth, for being here, and thank you all for being here. If you guys think of any other questions you have about registration or classes or room and board, dining, anything like that, do not hesitate to connect with me via my
Holly,
email. And
sorry,
I'll
we
happy to
did
answer your
have one,
question.
sorry, we did have one question
Sure.
from somebody who messaged me. She just wanted to know, with things being remote, if somebody still wanted to get their CAM card and their parking pass, can they still do that this week?
Yeah, the office will still be open until 5 p.m. I say 5 p.m., but I advise you to get there by 4 p.m. because sometimes they may close at 4 if there's no one there. So the office will still be open if you want to go and get your CAM card and your parking pass. Yes.
Thank you, Holly.
No problem. Yesterday, I sent you all an email about CAM cards and parking passes and where the building is on campus if you choose to come to campus, and where you need to go. So just take a look at that I sent you yesterday. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Goodbye.